some more halftime facts. 1934 World Cup. This one's part 3 of round 1. Just like the other videos, I picked 4 nations that did compete with each other, and the best 2 nations, or the 2 nations that won their games, would go up against each other in the quarterfinals. The 4 nations I picked this time around is Italy, who hosted the 1934 World Cup and were the winners of this one. The USA, who was Italy's very first opponent at the World Cup. Spain, who has made their debut, and Brazil, who has competed in their second World Cup. So I'm going to start off with the lowest ranked team in the retrospective rankings for the 1934 World Cup, FIFA's rankings. That happened to be the USA, who were ranked the lowest out of all nations. They lost to Italy 7-1. After having a great World Cup in 1930, 1934 was quite the opposite for the USA. Again, losing heavily. That was the USA's heaviest defeat at the World Cup, and also Italy's biggest win at the World Cup. The USA makes one other appearance at the World Cup in 1950 in Brazil, but don't return to the World Cup again till Italy hosts it for the second time in 1990. Since 1990, the USA has qualified for every World Cup except one, and that was the 2018 World Cup, which Russia were the hosts. In the 1990 World Cup in Italy, the USA do play Italy once again, and again, Italy do win. But again, it was a lot closer. This time, Italy won just the 1-0 over the USA in 1990. They do meet again in 2006. That's the third and final time that both nations do meet each other at the World Cup. This time around, the USA finally managed to get a point against Italy in the group stage. Italy do go on to winning that World Cup in 2006. However, I've got to move on to Italy now. So Italy, as mentioned, they host the 1934 World Cup, which they do win, and they became the very first nation to win 2 World Cups in a row, or retain the World Cup by winning the World Cup for a second time in 1938 in France. Italy also became the second nation ever to host the World Cup on 2 occasions, hosting it for a second time in 1990. Italy have won the World Cup on 4 different occasions. I just mentioned they won it in 34 and 38, and earlier in 2006 I mentioned that. That's the most recent time that Italy has won the World Cup. They also won the World Cup in 1982 in Spain. And speaking of Spain, this was their World Cup debut as well, just like Italy. In 2010, they became the first European nation to win the World Cup outside of Europe. This would be a feat continued at the next World Cup after 2010 in 2014, when Germany won the World Cup in Brazil. Prior to the 2010 World Cup, Spain only made one Final Four appearance, and that was at the 1950 World Cup in Brazil, where they do lose to Brazil heavy. This was France's heaviest defeat at the World Cup, losing to Brazil 6-1. Also mentioned with Spain and Brazil, this was the first and only time Spain do beat Brazil at the World Cup. They meet again 4 other occasions, and they managed to draw with them. In 1978, they got a draw. Other than that, all the other times Brazil did play Spain, Brazil won, including in Spain, when Spain hosted the 1982 World Cup. Sorry, I meant 1986. That's the World Cup that Mexico hosted. Brazil was able to beat Spain then. It was 86, not 82. My apologies. And that kept mentioning Brazil. Brazil was the final team I was going to mention. at the World Cup. Halftime facts for this video. Brazil, in this match, this was their lowest scoring World Cup, only scoring 1 goal. Leonardo for Brazil did score. He has a much better World Cup in 1938, so does Brazil, obviously. But with that 1 goal for Brazil, every World Cup, Brazil has been able to score at least once. And this is the only World Cup where they haven't won a game in. So the 1934 World Cup. Again, mentioned they've qualified for every World Cup. Looking a little tougher this time around in the 2026 World Cup qualifiers. But they're in a qualifying position as I currently speak. I'm currently making this video. Anyway, that's halftime facts for my World Cup 1934 video, part 3, round 1. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it as usual. And once again, bye.